I'll switch and I'll start off. All right.
All
Okay.
right.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is Adwugda.
This is Merps, and once again, we have a special guest for this week's podcast. A little bit of an introduction. This person was number 4 in the leaderboards for December in NA. He was the number 1 rogue when Blizzard released the infograph in 2016. You probably just know him as the stats guy on Reddit.
Yeah, especially if you read Reddit. He is everywhere in the last few months.
But welcome, Tarrot. Thank you so much for joining us, Tarrot.
Yes, nice to be here. Thanks for having me on. Am I like the first non-streamer who's been on the Lightforge?
In a while.
Shokunin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we had Shokunin way back when, like as a coach.
Right.
All right.
So yeah, congrats on making it to this very exclusive club. I'm sure you're extremely happy about it.
Yeah.
Definitely something to put on your resume. But thanks for joining us today. I'm looking forward to talking about quite a few things today because if nothing else, you are very passionate about Hearthstone, which is good because we're passionate about Hearthstone as well.
Yeah, if people don't know me, I'm a bit of an ass. And like you guys, okay, you guys should know most of all how I'm an ass. Like Adwugda, do you remember a couple months ago, like you were doing your Adwugda thing about not being able to pronounce cards right?
Yes.
And it was something
not
like
a couple months ago, just always.
Yeah, it was something like Jade Behemoth, and you were pronouncing it Behemoth, and Merps was correcting. You were like,
"Is it
no,
Behemoth?
It's Behemoth. It's Behemoth.
It's Behemoth.
I think I used to pronounce it Behemoth, then I changed to Behemoth, and now I'm going to change back to Behemoth.
Wait, why?
I don't know. They're like letters. They're put together. They make sounds. No one knows what sounds they're supposed to make. It's a horrible language.
People do know how.
I'm an English teacher.
No, it's as if you're just like, it's like no one really knows if like the air exists. Like we do. It's out there. You can.
I teach this for a living. This is how I make my money. Knowing how to say words.
I've got to see it to believe it, man. And this is through some weird internet video call thing. I don't know. I don't know if I believe that English can be taught. That seems like an iffy concept to me. I mean, I've certainly.
Well, I don't know, but they pay me money for
it. Hey, that's. Anyways, so Tarot, please go on.
All right.
Also,
so as
Tarot,
I was
can
gonna,
you move your mic a little bit away from your face? It's like a little staticky.
All right, sure.
Yes,
is this a little bit better?
This is much better. Thank you.
All right. So as I was gonna say, like I've talked to you guys, and I'm pretty blunt, or I'm pretty blunt with what I say. Like when you were saying Behemoth, I said, okay, that was stupid, and I made a post about that in your subreddit.
Oh yeah. And I'm also used to like you disagreeing and asking questions in our chat like a lot for like more than a year.
Oh yeah, and like I disagree with you guys on a lot of the cards that you have on the Lightforge. Like on your tier list, like for example,
your posts are very helpful. Like whenever we post like a new update or something, you'll have like a whole list of like at least a dozen cards that you disagree with us on, and that's a really helpful to do things like catch bugs or just like reevaluate a card or just tell you you're wrong.
Yeah, it's not on the card good bad, but there is no way Drygold's Jailer is a worse card than Eye for an Eye.
I'm still trying to figure that card out because there's still no reason why it should be good. And when I use it, it's like sometimes like I agree with you. It's better than where we rate it when I'm actually using it, but I can't formulate an actual reason why it is that good. And until that happens, it's difficult for me to move it up.
All right. Hey, random question. Do you know what is the best in Wild Arena? The best performing non-legendary neutral card, according to HS Replay.
Oh boy.
I'll give you a hint. You're not going to guess it.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's not Hobgoblin.
No. I love that card, but no.
Huh.
Oh man.
I don't know. Enhanced Mechano?
It's gonna be something random, isn't it? It's going to
be an amazing card.
Wait.
Gnomish Experimenter?
Seriously?
Yep. I'm not joking. You can go to HS Replay. I'm not sure. Like, it's been trading places with Primordial Drake, but it's been like that for like the entire Wild Arena, where if you filter out legendaries, it's the #1 performing card.
Wait. Okay, so for people who don't know this card, you may not know because 1, it's a wild card, 2, it's a neutral, so it doesn't show up, and 3, it's not a good card. I mean, okay, it's an okay card. It's a 3 mana 3/2, and it draws a card, and if the card is a minion, which means the vast majority of the times, it transforms it into a chicken, which is a 1 mana 1/1 card, and that's the chicken that if you type got Coop, that's where the art comes from. The Gnomish Experimenter from back in the day. Like if you type got Coop in our Twitch chat, and you're a sub. So we're very familiar with this card, but as you can hear, like, even if it just drew a card, it wouldn't be the best card. Like, you know, like even in the 3 mana 3/2 draw a card, that'd be a really good card, but it wouldn't be the best neutral card.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I definitely. This is one of those ones like where I was saying Bright-Eyed Scout was the 3rd best card in the game, and I would always repeat that in chat. And it's just like one of those things where HH's replay is weird. But I think it is actually a lot better than a lot of people give it credit for.
How I don't understand how replay is weird. Like, unless there's a bug, there's nothing weird about it. These aren't cards that are like extremely high synergy cards because, and especially like the Bright-Eyed Scout, you pick it in almost any deck. It's good enough for that. Like whether you think it's the best card or just like a normally good card, you still pick it.
Like for the Gnomish Experimenter, I could see this as a card in which there's sort of a hard line or more of a polarized division between the good players understand that it's like very pickable, if not like, you know, a good card, it's very pickable. And the bad players look at it and they're like, I lose a card, which is totally the wrong way to look at it. But like bad players
like never pick it.
Yeah, like never pick it. And sometimes like people have a ton of spells in the deck and they're like, oh, I'll pick it. And whether or not
and especially if you have a ton of spells in your deck is probably pretty good.
Your deck is good. Because if you have that many spells, your deck is good. So you pick it. So you're either picking it because you're a good player and you've identified it as good and it weeds out a lot of the bad players. Or if you're just everyone in general, if you see it's like, oh, it's a 20th pick and I have 10 spells, I'll pick this. Then your deck is just good.
That's good. I mean, whenever you look at stuff with stats, and we're going to talk a good amount about stats today, we have Tarrot here. Like this, you got to think about why these things are happening, right? Like stats are always higher for high synergy cards, high archetype cards, and for something like Gnomish Experimenter, I think Merps is onto something. This is a card that does become better when your deck is better, and it is probably more taken by good players than bad players.
Yeah, for me, what I was going to say is that I think a lot of people and like this is like when Firefly came out, I thought Firefly was going to be an average card, but a 1 mana 1/2 that puts another 1 mana 1/2 into your hand is actually pretty good. Like Bone Baron it's a 5 mana 5/5, but it puts 2 mana 2 1/1s in your hand. That's good. Igneous Elemental, 2 mana, 3 mana 2/3 puts 2 1/2s into your hand. Even without the synergy, just filling out your curve with those cards is a lot better than not being able to do so. So I honestly think that the 1/1 chicken is like a little bit underrated because it's better to have a 1/1 chicken in your hand than to have nothing in your hand.
I will say there's a consistency to this because Gibberer is also rated really lowly on our tier list, and we have been trying to bump it up for a few weeks now, at least after Shady.
By the way, I was the one who was beating the Gibberer drum. Like Shady actually gave me credit for that. I was the one that said that. Crip has made a video about it. Amaz has made a video about it. Like Shady, like I had to beg him to pick the card, and now he loves the card. So like I'm the one beating the Gibberer drum, trying to get that card to its rightful place.
And so
you
all
start
these
a movement because Shady, like you convinced Shady, and it was Shady who planted the idea in my head. He's like, "Hey Merps, like it's not bad. You should try it." I'm like, "Fine." Now that I tried it, and I remember I was the one last time, not exactly last time, but I told Advocate about this. I have you on board, and you saw the potential.
I did. And I'm starting to become a believer.
Right. Lots of times, you know, it doesn't work out, but for a 1 mana card, like it's like the chance of it snowballing that much, it's just like, yeah, it is worth it.
Yeah, and when you talk about that, and not even the snowball, you talk about now Gnomish Experimenter, like Tarot brought up Dry Gulch before. Like there's this pattern where these 1 mana 1/1 seem to be having a very large effect on win rate, but not just like, oh, it's a little better than the tier list thinks. It's like, it seems like when you're playing with it or when you're looking at win rates, it's a lot better. Like, it's almost unbelievably better when you're saying Gnomish Experimenter is the best performing neutral card, right? Like, that's such a big gap to what the card is actually doing. Like, I remember when Gnomish Experimenter came out from, like, way back when, this is, like, GVG, we had to convince people that this was, like, an average-ish card at the time, right? Like, that you could take this or, like, a Flesh-Eating Ghoul or, like, a Murloc Warleader and it'd be, like, vaguely okay.
Yeah. It was an interesting time, but yeah, I think this is something in which we'd have to put this in, and yeah. So Tarrot, going back to what you were saying before, a lot of like not basically sometimes when you say like I think this score is incorrect, we might agree with it, and we're like, yeah, I think Tarot is onto something here, but we're always a little bit reluctant to move the score because everything is based on a system now, right? It's not just us saying like this is the score. We have to give like a foundational reason, and I think this might be sort of illuminating for our listeners out there as well. Like we can't just say, yeah, I think it performs higher than this score, so we're going to move it. Like we have to give a foundational reason. Like, okay, it's because it gives like this much tempo, or it's because this ability allows it to gain like 50% more initiative, like something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an algorithm. You can't, like, you move one of these, they all move. So whenever, like, if this is something we're not incorporating, whenever we figure out what we're doing wrong with 1 mana 1/1s being put into your hand, or like 1 mana cards in general being put in your hands, maybe, then it all gets fixed, right? Like,
oh yeah.
So,
but yeah, as I said, like I have a lot of respect for you guys. Like I have a lot of respect for like what Hearth Arena also does. So like if people don't know me, like I'll kind of go down like a list of a bunch of things I've done or I do for the community. So like every expansion I post my own like variation on the tier list. I use Hearth Arena because they're a little bit more steady and they agree a little bit more with like where I am. But it's like it's based on like what you guys, what Trump, what oh god, who is the guy after Trump?
Anti-gravity.
Anti-gravity, yeah. So like I'm like it's the standing on the shoulders of giants where it's like I have the easy job. I can just compare to what you guys have done. But like you guys have to continually update and change and come up with new things. Why just piggyback off you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's good. Like, this is what we want to see, right? We want to see the community being active. We want to see, people who are passionate about the game, put out this content, helping other people out. It keeps the game alive. And Blizzard should want its most sort of devoted players and its best players like this invested in the game, which I think might be a good transition point. So,
yep.
Tarot, you've made many multiple posts about stats, and I'm guessing first of all that's just from your enjoyment of the game and also your just enjoyment of analysis, I guess.
Okay, so basically, about a year ago or so, I played a little bit too much Warcraft, World of Warcraft, and I ended up getting tendonitis in my right arm. And then after that, I ended up getting tendonitis in my left arm from overusing that, like in response. So pretty much for the last year, I have been unable to play like most games or play for like long periods of time.
Not like a real game, like not like a Hearthstone slow, not an untimed game.
Well, yeah, like it took me like forever to finish Persona 5 when it came out. Like when it first came out, I couldn't actually play it because playing it would cause my left arm to get inflamed. I had to wait a couple months, and then I had like issues with my thumb. So it's like I've been spending the year just trying to like figure out what is going on with me, and so that means I have a lot of time to do absolutely nothing. And when I have time to do absolutely nothing, I take a look at stats. Like that's pretty much where it came from. So things that I've pointed out over the last year or so, I pointed out that the weapon bonus. I was the one who pointed out that they had increased the weapon bonus and not told anyone about it.
I was the one. Yep, I remember that.
Yep. All right, I did. What was it? I did like the first micro adjust where I said like they only adjusted mage when paladin and rogue were better. Just from looking at the numbers. I pointed out in KFT that they were missing 10 cards, although someone else told me about that one. The big one I did, which pretty much pissed off everybody, was that I pointed out that they had actually not been doing micro adjusts at all in KFT. And I called Blizzard liars, and Blizzard got, I think Mike Dene got upset at me, and the Reddit mods got upset at me and pretty much told me to behave.
I've been there. I've been there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then about a couple weeks or so after that, I made the post about the class card offering bonus not being implemented correctly. And pretty much the negative feedback from the micro adjust one, where I called Blizzard liars, had a lot of people doubting me, and then a lot of other people were doubting like how accurate my stats were. So I think first I posted that it was like 150% instead of 200%, and then later I got numbers from Arena Drafts, which like he gave me like numbers like a Bog Creeper in Paladin, and then compared it to like a spell. I think it was like Blessing of Kings and Argent Protector, I want to say. And they did that the same in Druid, like Bog Creeper versus Swipe and Druid of the Claw. And he gave me those numbers, and it made it very clear that since the release of the Mammoth Year, the start of the Mammoth Year, that the class bonus had not been implemented properly. But I posted this one, and then I got people who were saying, dude, get mental help. like I actually had a guy like saying,
Reddit, right? Welcome to Reddit. Whenever you do something, anything, there's going to be blowback, especially if you're criticizing someone else.
Yeah, so basically got a rep of being a Blizzard hater for that, because I was trying to point out that this stuff was wrong. And then like during Dual Class Arena, I pointed out that the class card bonus had been jacked up to its normal rates, and pretty much nobody believed me. And then I finally got a little bit of vindication with KNC released.
Yep. Because it was really obvious when that happened.
Yeah, when KNC released, like there was they said that they had fixed things, and then I pretty much told everyone on Reddit, I told you so, and I had Mike Dene thanked me in there for pointing out the mistake that had happened. Like they said that there had been like a bunch of complicated mistakes, and it screwed up the offering rates completely. One other thing, from way before I did any of this, I was the first person on Reddit to discover that Discover had a class bonus.
Oh, was that you? I did not know that was you.
I was the first person to post. I was not the person who got credit because I'd only done like 30 or 40 runs. And someone else made a post about it. It was like a 420 bonus. And so everybody latched onto his post and ignored my post. I'm sad about that. I'm still sad.
Yeah. But so
it actually ties into the point though, because the reason we did not know when I know with LOE it was a week-long turnaround, but they did not tell us at all before LOE that Discover had a class card bonus.
Yeah, they did not.
That was something. Yeah, that was something the community had to figure out on their own. That was something like I noticed from playing the first adventure and just seeing like Raven Idol pull way too many Druid cards. That was like, wait a minute, there is no way that this is not weighted for Druid in one way or another. And so it took us like a couple of weeks of like actually doing tests before they said, yeah, it's 400% bonus or something like that. But it ties into the fact that Blizzard doesn't tell us anything.
Yeah. And I guess this all sort of culminated with your latest big post. I think it was your latest one. I don't think you've had one since then, in which you sort of express your frustration with Blizzard and their lack of communication, right?
All right. Yeah. Okay. So a little bit of backstory. In KNC, when it released, Hunter was blatantly OP. Hunter was like at a 58% win rate in KNC in Arena, and like every other class, like in history of it, like 54% for Rogue had been the top, and Hunter was like 4% more than that. So it was just absurdly strong. And then like a couple weeks afterwards, they nerfed a lot of the Hunter micro adjustment cards, and they didn't tell us about it. So there was a post from a Chinese. I go there to pull their Chinese stats, the Yingdi Stide website. But there was a guy, Benedij, I think.
Benage.
Benage. Okay, so Benage made a post translating from Chinese to English, which if you're fluent in two languages, you know that translating anything like that is a pain in the ass. But he basically made a nice post, a lot nicer than anything I've done, that said, Blizzard, this was not a good idea. There's a lot of people who were confused. and please do not do this in the future. Like, we didn't get this. We were kind of upset about it.
Mm-hmm.
And he was speaking on behalf of the Chinese community.
He was very nice. And if you know Ben, I've met Benage in real life when I was in Beijing a couple years ago. Like, he does translations and things, and you may be I don't know, maybe he's translating this episode right now. He translates some Lightforge episodes too. Not all of them, but some of them. So, Benage, if you're doing the work translating this, here's a shout out to all of your hard work in the last few years for the Hearthstone community and the Arena community. So he does a lot.
He mentioned to me in the post that he also translates a lot of my rants to the Chinese community. So
that should be fun.
And because the Chinese community has a lot of the same concerns, and they oftentimes get changes before we get changes. I think you pointed out that the Chinese the Chinese stats from what is it, like the NetE stats are micro adjusted like a week or so before our stats follow. So it's definitely the communities are definitely connected.
I don't know that exactly. Like, I don't know that exactly. I'm just posting like what the win rates are, and then like so compared to the HS replay win rates, like there's some things that are weird. Like Hunter always, and I think it might just be a meta thing, but it's like Hunter always overperforms there compared to like over here in NA or EU or Asia.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's like they update there before here. But part of the reason is because we have no idea what micro adjustments are, and like so okay, getting back to the point.
Getting back to it, Benage wrote a really nice, polite post with a lot of citations, a lot of credit, and like asking Blizzard to do something about it, right?
Yeah. He made a post like he was using HS replay stats, but he made a post like how Bone Mare from class to class, like it's like picked 24% in some classes and 40% in other classes. And he was making like, this is like absurd. We have no idea what's going on. So he pretty much asked Blizzard to update for micro adjustments. So Blizzard, being Blizzard, they made micro adjustments and did not update after having been asked nicely to do so. So this was beginning of February, I want to say. I forget the exact date. It was like about as a 10.2 patch. So the 10.2 patch, they did micro adjustments, and they didn't tell anybody about it.
Yep.
So Priest, which had previously been the number one class, was like about 52-ish% win rate. It dropped from 52 to about 51 or so, which is a sizable. Like, it doesn't sound like much, but for arena classes, that's a sizable drop. Like, you don't drop that much without some sort of outside interference, outside hand of fate. So for me, I was upset about that because it was like, okay, I've been told to be nice to Blizzard, and here's this guy, he was nice to Blizzard, and then Blizzard went and they did the exact same thing that upset the Chinese community. Like, I was upset about that, but someone else had beat me to the punch, so I didn't even bother to post about it. And then later on, there was like the same week that they announced that Wild Arena was coming. So beforehand, when they did the arena events, like they gave us free tickets, right?
Yep.
And they told us that what the leaderboard numbers would be, right? And now for Wild, like I remember when they did the dual class arena, it was like 20 runs.
20 runs for the month and 15 for dual class.
Yes. And Abukta, what is the for the leaderboard? What are the numbers you have to hit for the month and for the event?
For the February and March and the Wild
February
event?
March leaderboard, and then for the Wild leaderboard.
I think it's like 15 for each of the months and 10 for Wild, but we didn't know that until like I don't know a couple of days before Wild started. Which
ties into the point that Blizzard communication sucks. All right, so that was the thing where it's like I had like as I said, I'm a mod in Shady Bunny's chat, so like a bunch of people they'll come into the chat and they'll ask. Hey, what's going on with dual class? Hey, how many runs do you need for the leaderboard? They ask all these questions, and I want to tell them the answer, but then it's like, okay, I think it's going to be this, but Blizzard hasn't told us. And then lo and behold, they changed things from the way they had done it before. So that was kind of the thing that just set me off, and I got upset about that, and that's what inspired my latest rant. So, you guys can probably post later, or like someone can link in the chat if you guys want to read through the rant. But the rant was basically pointing out three things about how Blizzard communication is horrible. One is that micro adjustments, nobody really knows what micro adjustments are.
They've been around for, what is it, 8-9 months now, and from the very beginning, Blizzard said, well, we'll see if we're going to tell you what the micro adjusts are. It's going to be 1 to 2%. And then very quickly, I think you pointed out that it was like 5 to 10% at least, if not more to that. And eventually it's now, 20, 40, like for Warrior. Who knows what it is for Warrior. But still, there's no...
I know
there's no way for us to know which cards are micro-adjusted, and we're just looking at class cards right now, right? When you get to what, like, for example, what Benage was saying, and I'm sure what you pointed out as well, when you do neutral cards, it really gets messy because we don't know which neutral cards are adjusted, how they're adjusted for each classes, whether it's at all consistent with what they're doing for the class cards, and it just becomes impossible to analyze the arena meta on a high level.
Yeah, like, one of the other things I did was, when I was... Okay, so... At the beginning of KNC, I pointed out that HS replay numbers were extremely weird, and that it looked like there wasn't a there wasn't a KNC bonus.
Mm-hmm.
But later, I actually went through and I just continued following up, and I figured that Blizzard actually, like, I had made a post about how things were weird, and then it turns out that it was just HS replay numbers were weird. Like, I asked Arena Drafts to give me some numbers for Priest, and I found that, like, everything except Dragon, Psychic Scream got micro adjusted the same time that like all the Hunter cards did, but none of the other Priest cards did. So I asked them to pull some numbers for me for Priest, and I found out that the Priest numbers were actually correct. So, like, I had to kind of make a, not necessarily apology post, but like more of an update post about, hey, what I thought it was just like weird numbers from there. But what I found there, and this is something I haven't followed up on, is that, like, a card like Burglary Bully, 5 mana 4/6. If your opponent casts a spell, you get a coin. And the numbers for like, it's an epic card, so it's gonna vary, but it varied a ton from class to class. Like, he pulled the numbers for each class for Burglary Bully, and I think I included it in the post, but it was like it varied from class to class. So I was like, wait a minute, if Burglary Bully, among all cards, if that is getting micro adjusted like 10% or 20, if that's 10 or 20% from class to class, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, and look, you obviously expressed your frustration in the post, and the feedback. I'll say, this wasn't the first time that you have been, as you would categorize it, very blunt in your opinions with Blizzard, and this time, a lot of other times you've gotten a lot of criticism, as you stated, but this time, I think a lot of people, or more so than before, are agreeing with you. They're like, yeah, you know what, Blizzard communication is terrible. It doesn't seem like they're doing much. Benbro did come in to respond and basically say, we will pass this on, but we want to collaborate. And
oh my god, that response triggered me so much.
Oh,
I think I wrote like a response to his response, because the response that you wrote, like, this is a post that, like, has stats, has a lot of citations, like all of your posts. It's very well researched. At least, like, it definitely shows that you have put a lot of thought and effort into it. There are numbers, there's all these things, and then Ben Brode says, "Thanks for voicing your," I'm quoting Ben Brode here. "Thanks for voicing your concerns. I will pass this on to the folks working on Arena so they're aware." And then he wrote 3 more sentences for the rest of his post that basically is like, I don't know, very patronizingly talking down on you about, like, how to act as a moral human being in this world, about, like, cooperation and things. And it just, because he did the same to a much lesser extent in that he did the same to me, and that he ended his post to me on, like, the same note. But of course he responded to my post more substantively than he responded to your post.
Yeah,
that trigger. Oh, good. I'm reading this post right now. My response to him is the highest voted response. That makes me happy. Because my response to him basically was like, you should not say that. That this is not what the post is about. You're changing the topic, making this PR. I don't know if he intends to do it, or this is just like natural instinct for Ben Brode, in his role. But this is not like you can read this whole thing. Like, this is the post is titled, "It really upsets me how Blizzard is with Arena
horrible
players
Blizzard is.
rant incoming.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so in fairness to Ben Bro, the point he made is that I made a point at like the very end of it where okay, throughout the whole thing, I said that Blizzard, I was critical of Blizzard.
Mm-hmm.
I said that, okay, the reason I was upset, okay, because I haven't got to this. The reason I was upset was not that they made the changes. Like, nobody is sad. Like, even though I'd like playing against Priest, nobody is really sad that Priest became a weaker class. But what I was upset about was that they had patch notes and that they made a change in the and they did not include it in the patch notes, and that the entire community had to find out basically from me making this point that micro adjustments had happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I was critical. I said that the Blizzard was incompetent like in the midway through, because if you can't write patch notes, that's just incompetence. And then I said at the very end, he quoted it, if somebody is in charge of communication, this person needs to be removed from their position because they are clearly incompetent at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Which is me trying to be a polite way of saying this person is horrible at their job and should not have this job anymore.
Yes. I don't think it was a polite way of saying that. I think it was a pretty direct way of saying that, and I think it's pretty
if I was direct, I would have just said fire the scumbag.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty reasonable thing to say at this point because it's been a lot of time. It's not like someone screwed up once, or twice, or 3 times, or 4 times. Although I'm sure that person has a really horrible job if there is someone with that job, and I'm pretty sure there is not one person with that job. That would be
everybody
pretty
knows
limited.
Me because that person keeps screwing up because they don't tell us anything.
And they don't tell you stuff, probably. Like, they don't tell us stuff because whenever they try to tell us stuff, it's wrong, right? Like, that's part of what you've been, like, outlining over the past year, how every time Blizzard has tried to, like, say something, you know, they've told us offering odds, right? They've been very clear about what offering odds should be, minus the micro adjust part, and they were wrong. Like, class cards were not double or whatever percentage they were saying it was. It actually had been wrong the entire time, and they didn't fix it until like I guess in the middle of November after the dual classes. With the events that gave the Halloween event that gave dual classes. So even if they were communicating it to us, it would have been the wrong communication. And on top of that, in many areas, they were not communicating to us. So it's, I mean,
and on top of that. So the very first changes that Blizzard made to the arena, one of the very first ones they did was they did the banned cards.
Yes.
One of the second ones they did was they nerfed Flame Strike and Abyssal Enforcer, so that they would only be seen 50% as much. So one of the things I pointed out was that after the Hunter nerf, Flame Strike and Abyssal Enforcer, like, this is actually written into the rules. Like, these 2 cards have a 50% reduction. And then that reduction was removed with the Hunter change. And it's like, I pointed out the stats. Like,
were they actually removed? Because it feels like they're still lower than the other premium. Like, I'm looking at the stats for, like, Flame Strike.
They're lower, but it's not 50%. It's
not 50%, exactly. Like, it was changed somehow. It wasn't, like, completely reverted. And there's also micro adjust. Maybe it's been reverted and then micro adjusted down. Maybe it somehow got micro adjusted up. Like, we don't know, right? But it's not like it's back at 100% what premium cards in Mage are offered at. And it's
I actually included the numbers. I included the numbers from HS Replay when I took it. So the HS Replay, okay, so if you know math, you can calculate what the expected offering rates of cards should be before micro adjusts. I made a post like that for KNC, and I made a post like that for the Wild Arena. So I can use those numbers, and I can calculate the HS Replay numbers. The HS Replay numbers, they have problems, but they're never going to be like there's always going to be a floor there. Like, the actual number is going to be higher than any number that they have, but so it's never going to.
Why does the HS Replay number have problems? Like, what is the fundamental issue with HS Replay numbers? We've told our audience this before, but I just want to reiterate that so it's not like
The HS Replay number is based upon everybody who drafts using and their deck when they upload it to HS Replay. So what happens is for decks, like, you're going to get a mix of players who are very good, and you're going to get a mix of players who are very bad picking cards. So some cards, like, again, Eye for an Eye. Eye for an Eye, I don't think should ever be picked, and it gets picked. Like, literally, like, Howl Fiend is a horrible card. Like, maybe it gets picked, like, 1 out of 100,000, but it still gets picked. So the problem is with the HS replay numbers, people will not pick according to what you think they should pick.
Right.
Like, for example, Stone Skin Basilisk. Like, everybody knows this card is an insane card in the arena. It's like almost an auto pick. Like, maybe for each class, there's like maybe 10 cards tops that are better than it. But when you look at the HS replay number, it's like it's not even that popular of a card.
Right.
So you have to deal with people who kind of don't know what the really, really, really good cards are, picking cards, and that messes with the numbers.
Yeah.
So like, there's
HS
a lot of
replay doesn't know what cards are offered. They only know what cards are in the deck. So looking at the best cards in HS replay is usually a pretty good standard, because if everyone sees a Flame Strike, they pick a Flame Strike. But again, like you said, that's not actually true. Sometimes people actually don't pick a Flame Strike for whatever reason, and there are cards that are actually good that you would think is premium, but a lot of people, like a sizable percentage of people, maybe 15%, maybe 20%, don't treat them as that, and that skews the stats. So the stats are never exactly right that you get from HS Replay, but they're always within a pretty limited ballpark when you're looking at top cards.
Yeah, as I said, like the numbers you're going to get, the actual offering rates are always going to be higher and never going to be lower.
Yes.
So from this, I can take a look at Flame Strikes. So this was the pre-wild meta, and I calculated from the HS Replayers, there are 0.444 Flame Strikes per mage deck. So the thing is that when you compare it to the expected rate of mage spells, that's like only 24% less than the expected number of Flame Strikes you should see. So what that means is that there's not a 50% reduction, but rather there's at most a 24% reduction, and probably more realistically, like only a 20% reduction on the number of Flame Strikes that you would see in Arena. And then Abyssal Enforcer, it's the same thing. Like the number of Abyssal Enforcers you see is like 23% less than what the ceiling should be.
And I think you realize it when you play it, right? Like, Flame Strikes happen. They happen fairly frequently these days. And at one point, they almost never happened, right? I remember the game in like May where you just stopped seeing Flame Strikes.
And putting this into like the real world thing, I remember for about a 2-week period where I still didn't adjust, right? Because I didn't know like, any of this stuff was happening. Like, so previous to that, I was just not playing around Flame Strike, and I was consistently rewarded for not playing around it, right? And then, like, I remember in a few games, I was like, okay, well, he had it, but that's rare. And then the next time, I'm like, all right, he has it again. That's just, like, clock is right twice a day. Like, a broken clock is right twice a day still.
Yeah,
so
the clock is right most of the times in the day.
Right, and then I'm just like, wait. Like, Flame Strike actually seems to be appearing like a decent amount. And then, like, so this is the real world application to these decisions that they're making. Like, I trust that it'll be the same because they tell me about this stuff. Or like when they change it, there's always going to be, unless I'm checking HS Replay every single minute, or Tarrot decides at that point to check it and then post it, and I read the post. Otherwise, I'm not going to go. And I'm not like the most casual player either. I'm not going to go to figure this out. And for like that adjustment period, I'm going to play the same way and get punished for it, like I did. I lost against so many.
Like, you would actually, by being a good player, you would actually play worse than if you had no idea what was going on, because you have adjusted your strategy to knowing what the rate of Flame Strike is, rather than just totally like not caring as a regular player. And so you are like pretending you have reads, right? You have reads that they have a 10% chance of having a Flame Strike, and you're playing with that. And it turns out they actually have like a 20% chance of having a Flame Strike, and now you're screwed because your odds, it's an arena, right? You win a lot of the times by making predictions on margins, and your margin, when it gets doubled, it kind of ruins everything. So it takes good players and makes them worse at the game than bad players on individual reads, and that's horrible. That's like a really horrible thing to do to your game.
Yeah.
And I made my point here is that people have no idea what is going on with Arena. Like, Crip is the most popular Arena streamer, and then I'll listen to him. He'll talk about micro adjusts, and he doesn't know what's going on. Like, I think like there's a lot of people, like I see in Twitch chat, like if there's like anything that seems odd, people they say it's microadjusts. Like if you get like a deck that has a little bit more of early game, people will say it's microadjusts. So like like Ben Brode, he made his point about how he didn't want an us versus them thing because of how rude I was. But I'm at the point where it's like it's already there.
Yeah.
Like the community as a whole, we have no idea what is going on. And I mentioned that microadjusts, like I said, microadjusts are a boogeyman for arena players. Like anything bad that happens, all of this happens and we don't know what's going on. Therefore, we blame the microadjusts. And as I mentioned with like the rules, like it's been okay. So it was December 20th. It's March now. So it's been more than 2.5 months. Like if there was a bug, Blizzard should know about the bug to Flame Strike and Abyssal, but it hasn't been fixed. So unless you're like a person who pays a lot of attention, you're not going to know about you're not going to know about these bugs. And then or like what things are. And if you're just like a casual arena player, then you're going to perform worse because you have no, like if you know one thing and then that one thing is wrong, then you just perform worse. As you guys said, like if you're you pay a lot of attention, then maybe you know, but if you don't, then you're just going to make a lot of mistakes, a lot of bad reads. And the problem is that Blizzard does not tell us anything about what is going on. Yep. And then that's where I got upset. That's where I went on my rant. And just to make a point here, like I understand that calling for someone to be removed from their position is an extreme thing. And it's not a nice thing to say. It's an entirely rude thing to say. But again, I'm an English teacher. If I go in and my kids, they don't know how to speak English or how to write, then I'm doing horrible at my job and I should not have that job. In the real world application. Like if you do horrible at your job or if you do not perform your job satisfactory, then you should not have that job. Right. Like I'm rude, but I stand by this. And like even in my post of Ben, I didn't apologize to it. I just said because it's what I believe. If someone has a job of doing like communicating these things, and honestly, I think the devs like they wear like a bunch of hats, and I think they probably have a lot of work. But if there's a dev whose job is to get things into patch notes and they cannot do that job, then there needs to be someone else who can at least do the bare minimum. Like I know people want the like actual numbers, and one, I don't trust Blizzard to actually be consistent with those numbers, and two, like I understand that it would require a lot of resource investment for a very small portion of the fan base to put out exact numbers that'd be confusing to most of the players. I get why they don't like say every single mic. Like I get why they do it. I know that they do it for like every other game. They do it for StarCraft when they make adjustments to cards. They do it for Overwatch. They do it for Heroes of the Storm. I don't know why they can't do this for Arena, but I understand that it requires effort, resources,
right?
Patch notes, like how does patch notes require anything?
I want to bring up 2 points here, which I think some people. So what gets lost in this is I do want to make 2 points. So number one, for a lot of people are just like that was really rude what Tarrot said. I don't like the tone and everything. So number one, Tarrot was here saying
there's a reason we talked about Benage. That was the not rude version of this that happened like a month before.
Exactly. So first of all, and not even just Benage, Tarrot has posted multiple times in which he just lays out sort of here are these problems, I think these are issues that you guys have. Here you go. I have presented it. I have done the work for you guys, and he has done that multiple times. The community, like us being part of it, and also many people have posted, and then that post is just a culmination of the amount of times in which we didn't get a response. Frustration naturally boils up. And then, look, if you disagree with the words that Tarrot uses, I think that's absolutely fine. Like not everyone will agree with that. But I think the overall sort of frustration and just sort of the number of, quote, chances that we have given Blizzard is more than enough. It's not as if Tarrot just came out and just be like, look, these are issues that no one has ever raised before.
Okay, can we? I don't even like this topic is off topic.
Yeah.
Because what is this topic? This topic is Tarrot a good human being? That is not the topic. That's
Maybe.
not... Well, you may be interested in that topic, Tarrot, because you are Tarrot. But I'm not really interested in that topic, and Ben Brode should not be interested in that topic. The topic that everyone should be interested in is how to make Arena better. Like, what always happens whenever... There's two things that the community can do, right? The community can be nice, and then the community gets ignored. That happens all day. Usually people are nice, right? Like, if you just put a bunch of people around each other and try to make them solve a problem, they're going to be nice until nice doesn't work, and then some of them are going to stop being nice. But regardless of that, there's always people being nice, and they don't get anything. At least when it comes to Blizzard in Arena, maybe Blizzard in general, maybe just Team 5, I don't know. But that's a very consistent pattern that we've seen. I don't mean that like in life, nice people don't get stuff. So don't. I don't want people to go out and say that. But definitely when it comes to Blizzard, we have a established pattern that goes on for several years. And then two, whenever someone does say something that is kind of rude, or maybe just aggressive, or maybe just uses very blunt language, you know, on a various scale of, oh, this is no longer just a polite conversation, Blizzard does respond pretty consistently. They're quite responsive. And they're very responsive in, one, saying they will look at something, and two, in saying, please stop being rude to us. We are the polite people. We are taking the high road. You are little trolls on the internet that use abusive language, and you are not really helping the way you can. Except all these people have been helping the way they can the entire time, not just in that post. And the issue is the substantive issue that by bringing the character of the person, it's an ad hominem attack. Like, for people who don't know how, like, arguments are worked, this is the basic, like, politician's move, right? It's like, you don't attack the argument because either you don't want to engage in the argument or you're on the losing end of a logical argument. And so instead, you say the person making the argument is a horrible person or argued it in a horrible way or did something else wrong. And so therefore, you know, asterisk it, right? Even though the substance has nothing to do with it. Like, I was so triggered when I first read Ben Brode's response, which the problem is that it sounds like a really nice response. And that's why it's written that way, right? These are, like, if you work in a corporation and you want to, like, keep your job and rise through the ranks, like, that's what you do. That's exactly what you do. Like, you write a lot of things like this. You say a lot of things like this. That's how you win at the game. But that's not how you actually get things done. Like, if you work in a large corporation, you know who these people are. You may be one of these people, and it may be fine if it's about keeping your job or getting a raise. But when it comes to actually getting things done, which is, you know, what we at the Lightforge care about, and what Tarrot cares about, and what if you're an Arena player you should care more about, what actually gets things done is maybe not the opposite of this, but this certainly doesn't help. Like, this is what I wrote in response to Ben. I said, admittedly, the Arena community is not as good at using PR-friendly words as you are, but we shouldn't have to be. We should be bringing up the real game-impacting issues, and your team, Team 5, should be resolving them. That's how our collaboration works. That's how it's not us versus them. That's how us and them work together. Please focus on substance, not wordsmithing. The Arena community has no issues with your words this past year. They all sound great. However, we have been generally disappointed with the direction of your team's actions and the speed which you admit to mistakes/oversights and fix them. Words don't change that. I wrote something similar when Ben responded to me, you know, like back in, I don't know, was it like August or something when we're talking about synergy picks, which we'll talk about later with Tarrot as well.
Yes, synergy picks are good.
Tarrot, the one Arena expert who doesn't think that synergy picks are okay or that they could be done in like a really good way or like something, but that synergy picks actually overall was indeed a good thing. Anyway, point being, the fact that we have spent the last, I don't know, maybe like 15 minutes talking about form over substance, and that all this entire post, like half of it, devolved into form v substance debates. When Tarrot spent maybe like 5% of his post on form and 95 on substance, and Ben Brode spent 80% of his post on form and 20 on substance. Like, it shows you how to derail something, right? Like, this is what PR is for. Tarot's not a PR person. I'm not a PR person. Ben Brode is like half a PR person. That's at least half his job. Like, this is to say that if this is going to be a game about who makes prettier words, that's the us versus them mentality. So Ben Brode is here, like, attacking Tarrot or other people who brings the stuff up for having an us versus them mentality, But the very act of using PR and focusing on that and focusing on the form versus the substance, that itself creates the us versus them mentality of us, the developers, the high-minded people who are professionals, versus them, the trolls on the internet who are calling for people to be fired like lunatics. Like, that's the picture that Ben Brode plays up every time he makes this response. He does it in a passive-aggressive PR kind of friendly way, which, you know, is definitely the correct way to do that. But that's not helpful. Like, calling it us versus them mentality to a post which is like 90-95% substance and 5-10%, you know, rant, as it was actually titled a rant, like, that's the us versus them mentality. And as a developer, you need to be better than that. Like, flat out, you need to be actually above this like level of pettiness. If someone puts a 10% post that is you know, like a bad form, let's say, you need to ignore that part and focus on the substance. That is part of your job. And we don't get that from Blizzard. Nobody gets that from Team 5. Every time Team 5 does anything, it creates a us versus them mentality and widens the gap. And that is not on the community, which as customers and as people, like, we can do whatever we want. We don't have this, like, obligation to Team 5 to use fancy words. Team 5 has an obligation to the community to engage with the community, or to at least inform the community. And when the very substance that we're complaining about is that they don't do that, and they come in and use divisive language, saying that there are some language that's being used by the community that's divisive, like, if it's done in a well-intentioned way, then they are blind to their own actions. But I suspect that it is done in a deliberate way to try to shift the topic. And it's impossible to fight. That's why it's used by politicians everywhere. Like, this is how you do politics. This is how you do politics in, like, nationally. This is how you do politics in, you know, a company. This is how you do politics in the world, right? In life. This is one of the skills you have, but it doesn't help the substance.
Yeah. Okay, for the record, I have no problem with what Ben Brode said. Mm-hmm. Like, I like.
No, that's okay. I know what. That's not what triggered Tarrot. Tarrot had a very nice response to Ben Brode.
Yeah. I just want them to, like, acknowledge more, because as I said, I made a post, like, when I made the post, like, the reason I make such long posts is because I think through, like, everything, like the arguments people are going to make, like, oh, why does this matter? Why should they do this? Like, why do microadjusts matter? And one of the things I said was that a lot of these issues are issues with communication, because what Blizzard does for the arena, like, I know you guys hated synergy picks. I know the community hated synergy picks. But I liked that they made an attempt to do something for the arena. The arena events that they have done have all been positive for the arena. Yes. Like, microadjustments by themselves. The issue is not that they happen. It's that we don't know that they happen. Like, nobody is going to say that Hunter should not have been microadjusted after they were posting a 58% win rate. So they are doing really good things for the arena. And I think the arena is a lot better, a lot more enjoyable. And this is probably a good time to transition over to, like, the standard versus wild arena, because we've spent an hour talking about this.
Yeah.
But it's like, for me, I just wish that they would tell us more about what they're going to do. Like, not even engage in conversation, but just tell us, okay, we're going to do X, Y, and Z about things that will impact win rates.
I agree. So before Adric to hijack the conversation away from me, and
I'm still triggered. I'm still triggered by this because I'm just reading this again. I'm, like, literally reading Ben Brode's response to this post again, and I'm getting triggered again.
My point number 2 was, this isn't about. So I think the first misconception is sort of this, like bad categorization is how you want to categorize tarot, and I think that's true. Like, that's definitely the wrong way to look at it, because that's not, like, what's under the microscope. But number 2 is sort of, this is about communication. This isn't about micro adjustments, because I think a lot of people catch on about micro adjustments, and I've heard one of the arguments is like, okay, well, they don't want to give you micro adjust. It's like, no,
I'm with that argument.
This isn't right. Like, I think to a degree it is true. Like,
I think 100% agree it's true. That's why I don't latch onto the micro adjustments argument. Like, back in December on the Lightforge, I think.
Okay, I'm going to stop you for a second. I'm going to finish because you've cut me off way too many times.
Fine.
So
I've cut you off once, by the way.
Yeah, for 20 straight minutes. So you be quiet for now. So essentially what this is like if you just focus on the micro adjust, you're not focusing on the bigger issue, which is just Blizzard doesn't communicate, period, which I think Tarrot pointed out quite well in his post, because whether or not they want to give us the numbers from micro adjust, we need an answer in the way that, like, okay, yes, we have micro adjusted and here are the numbers. Yes, we have micro adjusted and we are not giving you the numbers because X, Y, and Z. And I made this example before, but you see this in other Blizzard games as well. For example, in Overwatch, when people complained about Hanzo's scatter arrow for more than 2 years, essentially, the dev team in Overwatch says, we hear you. Specifically, we hear that you are frustrated with Hanzo arrow and its sort of, quote, cheap ability to one-shot like most, if not all, of the heroes in the game. However, we are not touching it right now because we don't think it's as problematic. Number one. Number two, we're just really not sure how to do it. Number three, we have other stuff on our plate. And number four, it's just like, if you look at, like, they've basically listed the reasons why we, like, you know, you have identified this as an issue. We are not addressing this issue right now because of this. And for a lot of people in the community, they're like, okay, I think that's fair. Like, because they were working on other stuff, you see the progress that's made. And in Overwatch, at least, whenever there's a patch note, you know, you see all these changes and you feel comforted in knowing that they are communicating and there are stuff. It's about communication in the end. It's not about micro adjust. You know, like, the next thing that they change, if they just keep the status quo and the lack of communication, it's still a communication issue. It's just, it's a, like, people have wrongfully turned it into a micro adjustment issue because they latched onto that part. And then it's easy for them to say, like, oh, well, obviously Blizzard doesn't want to give you micro adjust. I totally agree. I don't think they want to give us micro adjust, but communicate this, you know?
I mean, that's why Tarot's saying fire the guy who writes the patch notes, not fire the people trying to figure out how to micro adjust stuff.
Yeah. So I think that is basically it. And, like, it's kind of ironic, right? Like, Tarot, how many posts did you write previous to this? And this angry one was the one that actually got a Ben Brode response, right? It's like, it's, yeah, at the end of the day, it's just, like, bottom line, like, let's not look at the things that's not the focus, right? Like, we're not focusing on Tarot, the person, we're focusing on the content. And also, we're not focused on micro adjustments. We're not focused on synergy picks whenever we do lobby these complaints. It is communication as a whole.
And it's communication with the people. That's like when the Hanzo thing for Overwatch, they made a video, they told the people. It's not like, I think Blizzard actually does a fair amount of this, so the devs are like, well, we're communicating with the community. All right, like, the pros are not the community. Like, they're part of the community, sure, but part of the communication is also with the people playing your game, and that's what we're focused on. Like, you don't get, like, halfway there by talking to Crip. You get an expert's opinion on it, but if you've communicated your changes to Crip, that does not mean that Tarot finds out. That really doesn't mean that the person who's playing your game, who has never heard of who Tarot was, much less, like, you know, they're definitely not going to find out. Like, you got to communicate to your actual players.
Anyways, all right. So we talked about this enough, and I think we're all hoping that something, you know, we get news, we get more updates. We know that Blizzard is they've got quite a few announcements coming up, right? They've already made one announcement about the Hall of Fame, and we're going to get more announcements coming up, and mostly just because we're going to get expansion news as well. So I'm sure they'll be packaging other news with that. But until then, we are still in the wild arena meta, and I think it's a good time to shift the focus a little bit. Tarot, how have you been enjoying wild?
It's really nice to see a lot of, like, the old cards, all the nostalgic cards. Like I miss Haunted Creeper. I know it's a little bit too strong, but I miss seeing that card. I miss playing around with that card. I miss, like, setting up the pings later on. I miss Spectral Knight. Like I mentioned it before, I miss, like, Shithorse. If you guys don't know, I miss that card. No matter how much I hate that card, I still miss seeing it, even if it's a bad card.
Please tell them what it is.
All right. The actual name is Armored Warhorse, and it's a 4-mana 5/3 with Battlecry Joust, gain charge, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason it gets the name is because Joust never works. So you're always getting a 5/3 horse. So like everyone hates the card because
it always works when the opponent has an empty board and you don't have lethal, and you just like get 5 extra damage to bring from 25 to 20. Then it always charges. But when you need to remove that Murloc like knight that's about to generate 5 more Murloc knights, that's when it doesn't work.
It's like Implosion. Like Implosion, if your opponent has a 3 health minion, it's always going to roll 2. If it's 4, it's always going to roll 3. If it's 2, it's always going to roll 4.
Yep.
So like that's pretty much my philosophy on Implosion. Like when I play the card is, okay, I'm fully expecting this is not going to work, so I better have a backup plan.
No, it's good. And with these cards, it's like they're good enough, or in the case of Implosion, so good that you have to use it, but you're just like, oh please, I need to. Like the standard deviation is so huge. The swing and win percentage is so huge from these cards.
There was a guy who I was facing, and he was so up on me, and he was a warlock, and I forget what I was, but then he decided to try to Implosion one of my cards at 3 health. And it did not work for him. He got 2 imps, dealt 2 damage. It was as if he did nothing. And then he proceeded to lose from there in a way where if he had just never taken that risk and just played any other series of cards that he had and just not used that card ever, he would have almost certainly won. Because he was that far up ahead of me at that point. But he did what he thought was the correct thing, which is to roll the dice on a 2/3 chance. And then that gave me the opening because the 1/3 chance happened. But what are you going to do? Like, you have to draft these cards. And part of the skill, I guess, is, like, using and not using these cards, even though you've drafted them. Because you have to draft them. They are, like, some of them are, like, useful enough, right? Like, the reason you take Armored Warhorse is not because it's the most awful card, and so you should never take it. You take it because it's technically kind of okay, and sometimes it's just your best choice.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, before I forget, I'm a pleb mod in Shady's channel, so I better plug his stuff so I can keep being a pleb mod. Shady Bunny has a new arena guide out for Wild Arena. I know it's on Arena HS. I think it's on the front page of the Hearthstone subreddit. The last time I checked, it was checking right now, and it's okay, it's on there, but it's like low on there. But anyway, go to Arena HS and you'll definitely find it because it's popular. It's like one of the top posts over there, and it'll be very useful if you have no idea what's going on in Wild and want to try to like.
I mean,
go
by
for
the
the
time
leaderboard
people on the
week.
podcast actually watch this, it'll no longer be on the front page of the Hearthstone Reddit. It's if you search Shady Bunny space Wild and scroll down on the Google pages, you'll find it. But it's in the Fade to Karma site. Like, if you type f2k.gg/articles, it's their latest article.
Yeah. All right. But anyways, I told you guys before, like Wild was really good for that first week. And then it's kind of like I realized, okay, this is why Wild had to change. Because it's like I kind of got bored a little bit. Like part of it was because I played a lot beforehand because of the Chinese New Year. But I got a little bit bored like after the first week with Wild. So I haven't really been playing that much over the last week or so.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say this because I have heard a lot of people say either I love this, it's a lot of fun, or like, oh man, it's too crazy, you can't play around anything. But I've never heard someone saying it's like they're bored, you know? It's like, oh, it's like they're bored of it. It's either like too much excitement, too much craziness, in a good way, or too much excitement and too much craziness in a bad way kind of thing. It's like anything can happen, right? So I'm curious, what makes it sort of boring for you?
Okay, let me rephrase this. I'm not bored necessarily because of Wild Arena. I'm bored because I played too much Hearthstone.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I thought Wild Arena was okay, but it's part of like the reason. Okay, so I had a 8.04 average in December. I took January off playing, February, I played on Asia. I ended up with like 7.8 or something like that. And these were by far my best finishes on the leaderboard, my best runs, or
Hmm.
yeah, like my best numbers. And a large part of that is because I felt in K and C, because you had the class card bonus, you actually had options. You had the options to be able to respond to things. Because
Hmm.
the meta was more controlled, there were a lot more options and a lot more chances for a comeback. And I feel with Wild Arena, it's like if you lose on the first few turns, then it's a lot harder to come back. So for
Yes.
me, it's one of those things where it's like I feel that there's a little bit like skills obviously still involved, but there's less skill and there's less of an impact of what you can do to increase your win rate.
See, I would take the opposite view and say, well, the first 4 turns, just play them right. If the game is determined on the first 4 turns, then just play better the first 4 turns. Because when it comes to like, if you look at win rates on these things, they all go like kind of similar, right? If it's in a control meta, it's not like the win rates are higher. In control metas, the win
Yeah.
rates are actually lower for the top players,
Mhm.
because in control metas, it's more swingy, right? It's more you have to
Yeah.
have the control card first of all in your deck, then in your hand before you can do anything, and that's like just statistically a lower percent time of a lower percentage chance of happening than like having your
Mhm.
curve, for example, if you are more in the curve stone. And in Wild Arena, it is more curve stone. Like that's what happens when you add
Yeah.
back GVG. It's gonna get more curve stone. So it shifts the skill to a different part of the game, and that's it's good for some people. It's not good for some people. It's fun for some people. It's less fun for some people. One thing
Mhm.
Wild does though, and this goes back to your point, Merps, about like, oh, it's all this like crazy with stuff. How do you get bored? Is if you're really playing Wild, it's the same format. Like
It
that's why
is.
people
It
hate
is.
Mhm.
Curvestone so much, not just because they think the game is determined in the first 4 turns, but also because they get bored of I don't play a 1 drop, you may or may not play a 1 drop, I play a 2 drop, you play a 2 drop, I play a 3 drop, you play a 3. Like that just lulls you into a kind of, oh, I'm just seeing the same game over and over again, no matter what class I pick, no matter what deck I pick. These are the same like 5 turns at the beginning, and the game's only 10 turns, so that's like half of each game is exactly the same.
Mhm.
So it is a little boring in that way, and I'm not someone that gets bored by stuff like that. Or I guess it's not like I'm not bored; it's just not a concept because I'm trying to win, and that's what gives me excitement. But if you're looking at it in terms of what makes an exciting game, maybe that's boring. Like I can see that. As much as Wild as variety of particular cards,
Mhm.
strategy wise, like Tara was saying, it is more limited than standard because you're being like you're giving everybody all of these like this card pool that is incentivizing more of the early game in a very standardized neutral kind of like fashion.
Yeah. Look, at the very least, I think Blizzard introducing this for 3 weeks, it's just positive,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like even
Oh
if you
yeah.
don't like it, you're just like, well, you know what? It's a good experiment. It's a good, and who knows? They might be looking at this and taking ideas from it, right? Like perhaps in the future, say, all right, these are cards that are wild, but maybe we'll just introduce it back into Arena or something like that. Like maybe they're
Mhm.
taking ideas and going to implement it in the future by looking at data from this event. Yeah. Anyways, I like personally, I've like sort of enjoyed it, but I've tried playing Hunter way too much, and then recently someone. Tara, was it you or it might have been Dreads? I forgot. Someone in the chat, like,
Dreads, I think.
okay, yeah, like came into the chat while I was streaming. It's like, hey, Merps, how do you feel now that Hunter is the lowest win rate class in Wild? I was like, man, that feels
Wait,
bad.
did it actually drop below Warrior? Like I
Yeah.
know Crip, I know Crip had the video that said that Wild Warrior was awesome, and I could kind of see it because they have Death Spite back, and that's like the best card they ever had. But oh my God, Warrior's at 46% and Hunter's at 45.8.
There we
Yeah.
go.
Mhm. Although this does make me feel a little bit better, like that one run I got one win with a Hunter. I'm like, man, this feels terrible. And we talked about this last week. It's just like, yeah, I have like the chows and the creepers, but paladins also have the chows and the creepers, and the paladins do much better with the chows and creepers than hunters do. So it does feel kind of bad. But you know what? It was fun. It gave me an opportunity to experiment a little bit. It dug into my gold. So you're welcome, Blizzard. Not bad, but I am looking forward to returning to KNC. I can't believe I'm saying that, but it will feel fresh when a lot of people are just really tired of KNC.
Hey, quick question for you guys, just out of curiosity. If you were to take wild cards and put them into like regular arena, would you take what kind of cards would you take? Like, would you take cards like Kraken and Shredder and Sludge Belcher, like premium cards, and put them in? Or would you go for like more like mid-range cards like a Mech Warper or like a Gilblunt Stalker or like what's that in TGT? Like maybe like a Lowly Squire. Cards that kind of fit the theme but are not really that impactful and just kind of use them to fill up like because I had the same idea, but I was thinking of because there's so few twos, like you could actually take the cards from the earlier expansions and put them in, and you could use that to fix certain things.
I totally agree.
Arena.
I mean, I would put all of the so a general rule, if you're wondering whether I like a card or not, if it's above a 150 on our tier list, I don't like it. Like if it's below a 75 on our tier list, I don't like it because that means the card is either too powerful or too or too weak and will rely on synergies or will just dominate everything. So it's definitely that middle range that I'm more interested in, and especially for something like 2-drops, right? Like we've been in a maybe on purpose, maybe a purposeful 2-drop glut from Blizzard's part and the people who do arena odds. And when Wild came out, it's not like we're in 2-drop heaven here. There are still drafts in which I can't fill a 2-drop curve, but for the most part I can. So if I want to build an aggressive deck, even though it's still not great to build aggressive decks in Wild, it's like viable now, and a huge part of that is all of these like huge toads, and like, you know, huge toad is 109. It's not even a great card or anything, but like it does its job. A Noyotron 108. Like Shredder is fine and all. I don't really miss Shredder. I don't, you know, when I see it now, I'm like, ooh, that's fun because I haven't seen it in a while. But if you really put it back, I don't think it's going to increase my enjoyment of the arena or decrease it in any like real way. But if I saw more 2-drops like Mech Warpers and stuff like you're saying, Tarrot, like that would definitely, like that's a way of actually affecting the meta without.
So,
by the way, for chat, just to let you guys know, I actually calculated. I didn't go by like 2-drops, like actual good 2-drops, but just like all 2-mana neutral cards. And I forget the exact numbers, but it was something like, it was like you would expect to see 3 in KNC, and it jumps up to about 5.5 or so in Wild.
You definitely
so that's like.
Wait, are you only counting neutrals, or are you counting all the class cards too?
I'm not counting class cards. Just neutrals.
3 neutrals, right? Because normally, even in KNC, you end up, depending on the class, seeing like maybe 4 or 5 of them because of class cards. But yeah, you see 3 neutrals and 5.5 now. That sounds about right. That sounds about my experience with Wild and with KNC as well.
So, Tarrot, to answer your question, I think I agree with Adukta, but not because of like for a slightly different reason. I think if I were to introduce cards, I want to introduce like the Gilblunt Stalkers, the Huge Toads, the Pit Fighters, right? Like the more vanilla-ish cards, or the ones in which even if they have an effect, it's like a very subdued effect, right? Like a Huge Toad, for example. Like that one ping can matter, and sometimes it does matter, but rarely it's just like, okay, you know, it's a little icing on the cake. It's a little bonus here.
What about Flame Juggler?
Okay, that card
no.
die. That card die. it's just like, wait, oh god, like the fact that the Huge Toad is,
it's if Shithorse was a good card, is Flame Juggler.
Yeah, basically. Much smaller, but yeah, I agree. And the reason I want like reinstatement of cards like Huge Toad, like Pit Fighter, is because I think Arena is trending in a direction, and we saw it with like Ungoro, you know, like KFT, and now KNC, in which stuff is too swingy and too polarized, not just in initiatives, but also in stat distributions. And I've stated this before, like before in other expansions, you'd see like 4/4s or a 5/4 or like a 4/5, right? Or sometimes, ooh, crazy, a 3/6. As we move on, like Blizzard doesn't like they don't like printing these like kind of like vanilla minions anymore. They want to print the Saber-tooth Stalkers, or they want to print like the the 2/8 taunt, right? Or like just these very polarized stuff. And then when they print minions as well, sometimes they like printing minions with huge swing potential, in which 90% of the time nothing really happens. But 10% of the time you win/lose the game because of it, aka Dragon Slayer, right? Like that's a good example there.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you just have the Defias Cleaner, in which it's just like the ability to silence a death. Like you have too many cards with either big swings or just, I think, unnecessary swings built in. So it's it's part of the reason why I'm just like it. Like you see the trend with a card like Servant of Yogg-Saron, right? And sort of why it's moved up the tier list all this time, because it's an arms race. You need it now. Like if everyone has swing cards, you need your own swing card, regardless of the fact that it can like kind of screw you. So that's what, like, I don't like that in the arena, and I think going from expansion to expansion, like Blizzard won't just like print pit fighters anymore. They won't just be like, here's a pit fighter 2.0. You guys will love this, right? Like people get really angry when they open that up in pack, and rightfully so for constructed, right? I can totally understand people get angry when they open that up, but for arena, those cards are necessary. We can't keep on having 2/8 taunts versus 1/9.
But are they necessary? And if they are necessary, I think Blizzard very like pointedly and consciously disagrees with you, because what's happening with the neutral classic cards that fit your description, like not a pit fighter, but like your Raptors and your Crocs, they're literally offered at half the rate of expansion neutral cards. So Blizzard really says as an actual policy, we don't want that. We don't want pit fighters in the arena. We don't want your Swamp Oozes or your Bloodfern Raptors or like your Yetis. We don't.
Well, on the other hand, they give you cards like Nesting Rock. And it's not pit fighter. Like, it's basically pit fighter stats, like 4/7 versus a 5/6. The stat line is roughly the same. And then they give you like the added bonus of gain taunt. So like they still print those cards, and they're still good cards. Like I'll cover it a little bit more when I go over Druid, but like Sated Threshodon or Violet Warp. Like I really like those cards, like even if they're big cards, because they're cards you actually have to deal with. They're cards that are kind of hard to deal with, but they're just like big stat cards that have no place being in any constructed deck, really.
Yeah, and I do agree. So it's like they do have these cards which are more vanilla-esque, but we see the movement here. It's like even the vanilla cards have a bit of a swing to it, right? And sometimes the swing from a Nesting Rock gaining taunt is huge. And we have the small swings, and then we have like the really big swings as well from cards that are like kind of vanilla, but then they can like have a swing, like Galaka Crawler, Dragon Slayer. These are just like pure counter cards, right? And if not pure counter cards, we have cards that have just synergies associated with them that just make them really good. It's getting to a state in which it's sort of like you kind of need to. It's like during the draft, if you are the guy that just drafts safe, you are going to lose a lot. Like no matter how good you are, you have to take the risks associated with the draft and with like just playing the arena as well. You have to high roll in order to get some 12s.
Yeah, and I mentioned to you guys before the stream, but I mostly play on the Asia server. The Asia server has this like people are scared of the Asia server. People are scared to go there because they see all these insane decks on the Asia server. So I'll give you guys a little bit of insight there. It's not necessarily that the Asia server that the players are better. Like I honestly think that the players on EU or NA are probably better, but and it's been like this for a long time. They are the kind of people that they go all in on these insane decks, or they go all in on this synergy. So like Wild Arena, for example, I lost to Dr. Boom on turn 7 at 2-2 twice on Asia. Okay, I've had 0-2 and 0-3 decks where I was facing decks that had no business being 0-2 and 0-3. It's just this turn they hit their stuff, and normally they don't. So like I think I've been playing, like, for example, Servant of Yogg-Saron. I've always thought that was a good card because I'm playing against this stuff, and I know I have to, like, when I'm getting to like the really high win rates, I'm gonna have the people who have these just like insane decks that hit, and so I kind of need to keep up with them myself. So again, a Servant of Yogg, like I play the card, I've picked the card. I picked the card before people actually thought it was a decent card. Like Deck of Wonders, you guys have it as a 0, and I have lost to that card so many times.
Oh,
so it's like
we.
one of those. Yes. So it's like, I know this is a bad card. I know I'm going to Cataclysm my whole hand and lose a game because of it. But I kind of have to pick it just because there's a chance it can get me a win that I wouldn't otherwise get.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Yep. And Asia, you're like, when you say Asia's always been like that, like literally since the first time, like since the game launched, Asia's been more swingy. And you've seen it in win rates too. Like when the same players, I know Isherwood does this a lot, and you've done it as well. Like when you go to NA or EU, you have higher averages.
Yeah.
But you're the same player. And it's not because NA or EU are like worse players, but it's just harder to get a consistent high average when everyone's going for the ridiculously like highly synergized decks.
I brought this up in Isherwood's channel, and he actually says that he does better on Asia than he does on NA or EU.
How?
I don't know, but I think it might just be a play style thing. Like it might be just like one of those things where if you play there long enough, you kind of know what to expect, and you can kind of
like you see them play like one or two things, and you're like, oh, I know this ridiculous synergy is gonna happen. So we're still like, oh, he can't have that. Isher's like, oh, he's gonna have that. Now I'm gonna prepare for it.
Similar, similar, but it's more drafting, like where maybe you realize you have to be a lot more defensive, or you have to be a lot more aggressive while you're drafting, and it's just like a subtle thing there.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, so Wild is going to be with us for a short time, and then we're back to KNC, right? Man, we've already spent a long time on this podcast, but we did want to talk about Druid in KNC because Tarrot, you made a post previously sort of highlighting your success with Druid in the KNC meta. Tell us a little about that.
All right. So I'll combine this with the card Good Bad Grizzled Guardian just to kind of speed things up. But basically, when Druid came out, I'll be honest, I had a strong difference in opinion on what I thought were the good Druid cards versus what you guys had. Like I remember, like you guys still have Greedy Sprite pretty low. You had Ironwood Golem as like a horrible card until you could fix like the armor thing, and things like that. I think Grizzled Guardian was like, I think it was under 100 or something like that. Like I'm not sure. I know
right
it jumped
now.
up.
It moved up a little bit.
Yeah,
I think it was always like around 100, but now it's like a premium, like a low premium.
Yeah. But anyways, I thought that Druid was going to be a really good class because a lot of the cards had internal synergies with it. So like you guys mentioned before synergy picks. I'm not going to bother, like, no time to go over that. I can maybe go over that like sometime in the future. But I draft synergy decks. I like drafting decks based around synergy. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that's part of the reason why I like to synergy pick. Like, there's a lot more reasons. Again, not going to go into it. But I like drafting decks based around a central theme. So the theme I had for Druid was Grizzled Guardian. Because Grizzled Guardian, in addition to Oaken Summons, in addition to Guild Recruiter, they have the same effect where they recruit a minion that costs 4 or less. So Grizzled Guardian, when it dies, it recruits 2 minions. So what I did was I came up with a style and I tested it, and I averaged what I ended up averaging. It was like 9.27 over my leaderboard attempts. And it was like 13 runs. I had a 10-win average, and I finally had a bad leaderboard. Like I had a 3, and it dropped my average to like 9.5 or something like that. But it's basically Grizzled Guardian is a card which, if the chat doesn't know, 8 mana, 3/5 taunt, death rattle, recruit 2 minions that cost 4 or less. So what I wanted to do was construct a deck archetype based around this. So in order to do that, you can't really take ones or twos, or like twos that are poor twos to recruit. So for example, Druid of the Swarm, obviously a great card, but it gets recruited as a 1/2. Forbidden Ancient, obviously a very good card, but it gets recruited as a 1/1. So what I decided to do was, and I experimented with this, and it turned out to have a lot of success, was that by drafting heavy on strong 4s and strong 3s, and for the most part ignoring 2s that did not do anything, that I ended up just having a lot of success with this based around the card and based around the style. And then from that, I had to come up with, okay, this is how my deck is strong. I got strong 4s and 3s, and I'm giving up my early game. I'm intentionally not drafting 2-mana cards, and I'm just, okay, so how do I compensate for this? And the way you compensate for that is by finding things that help you recover. So, for example, Jasper Spellstone. Like going back to Shady. Like I was kind of coaching Shady on how to draft Druid in ANC and how to play it. Like I remember there was like one draft. It was him and Collins, and then I was helping in the chat the draft. And it was like 5 or 6 cards where they said they wanted one thing, and I said I wanted something else. And they went with my pick, I think, almost every time, and the deck ended up going 11. And it was just like afterwards, like all my suggestions were right. But it was based.
And so, where were your suggestions pointing to? Like, what were the examples of some of the like difference in picks?
Okay, so for example, Shady was worried that like it was a Fireplume Phoenix versus a Noyatron. At the time, there were no real 5-drops in the deck. So Shady, he was worried about getting curved out and missing his 5 and having a problem there. And so for me, what I felt was that Fireplume Phoenix is obviously it's a better card in a vacuum, but it's also a much better card in this style because you need those. The deck is based around you giving up your early game. So you need those initiative cards.
Okay, you mean Cyclotron,
back.
Right?
Oh, Cyclotron,
okay.
Yes.
I was like, sorry about that. How are we doing 5-drops? Yes,
I was
Cyclotron.
very confused here.
Cyclotron versus Fireplume. Okay. Cyclotron being a 5-drop, Fireplume being not a 5-drop.
Okay, yeah, sorry, wrong crazy mech. Wow, it's got me crazy. But okay, anyways, so like that was an example where I said, okay, I don't really care about my 5-mana cards all that much, but I care about those situations where I need a small ping. There was another one. It was Ancient of Lore versus I think it was Ancient of Lore versus a Void Ripper. And I convinced them that, okay, so you have these strong 4-drops, but you don't really have the late game necessary. So Ancient of Lore in this style, for just being a body and being able to get a card, like we have enough 3s. So Ancient of Lore would actually be better for the deck and better for the style for just like something in the late game to refill with. And it ended up helping. Like there was a couple Priest games, I think, where Ancient of Lore did a lot of work where Void Ripper would not have been as impactful.
So even if you don't draft 2s in Druid, you still end up with decks that could be, that could potentially be smaller than your opponent's decks. Because it's KNC.
Because you can't out control Priest,
right?
But you can you can outvalue them. Like you can out card them, but you can't really out control them. So for example, Lotus Agent. I always think it's a great card. I think it's a really good card for the deck. Things like as I mentioned, Grizzle Guardian, a really good card for the deck. Branching Paths. Not only does it get like a bunch of unexpected lethals, but just having the option to get cards later in the game or the cards to upgrade your spell stones is really good. And then on top of that, and Druid actually has a lot of reach, which like a lot of other classes don't have. So for example, Starfire. Starfire is a great card because it feels like all these little things that you want. It's a value card that lets you get to your deck and lets you get to your power cards. It's a card that can go face and get you unexpected lethals. It's a card that can be used as a removal if your opponent has something on the board. So it's like all these small things that where it, like I know Shady. He had the Shady Shaman when Priest was the thing, and it's like if one or two cards were off on that, then it wouldn't work. And it felt the same way for me when I was doing this as a Druid, where like I want to go for these 4s, and then I want to be able to draw these 4s and eventually just be able to out tempo and outvalue the opponents based on that. So like I would like things like I don't think you guys like have a Kobold Monk. I think pre-Wild was like in the 100s or something. Cursed Disciple, same thing. Like these are just really strong cards that are kind of AoE proof, that they're really strong on 4, and they can kind of, if your opponent doesn't have the right answer for it, can help you flip the board back and be a threat while not investing that much mana into it.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting style. And, you know, just hearing your examples, I think I would have gone with Shady's picks as well.
Yeah, like both of those, I'm like, yeah, I think I would have been more worried about what Shady was worried about than this.
And especially with something like Void Ripper, my gosh, I love that card. That card has like crept up my own personal tier list like so high. Like it's a 3/3 that is like a super, you know, like Dark Iron Dwarf sometimes, and other times it's like a 3-mana 3/3 deal 6 damage or something. But you know, this is what I do like sort of hearing. You know, like when people come with a new play style and something that has obviously worked out really well. Did you basically tell listeners what your win rate was, or what your sample size and win rate was?
I think I mentioned it was like over like 9.25 over 15 runs total.
That's insane. Yeah, that's.
And then keep in mind, this is the KNC meta, which posted the lowest win rates in recent memory for top players.
Yeah, so that is really good, and this is definitely a style in which I, if I didn't sort of proactively try to build towards Grizzle Guardian, try to build towards this like strong 4 as well as strong 3, and like giving up something like Druid of the Swarm is like crazy to me. Like in my head,
Druid of the Storm is rated a 156 on our tier list.
Right,
like giving that up, it would take a lot of balls. Like if I'm like playing in a serious way, rather than like an experimental way.
Yeah, and for the record, I'm not saying like don't pick the card. I'm saying that if you have another card that is better for the archetype than like for example, I'm trying to think of like a good card for that. But like I would take Kobold Monk over Druid of the Swarm if I had a Guardian.
Oh,
wow. That is quite a difference, because Kobold Monk is that's the 3/6, right?
Yeah, but as I said before, just like the fact that it's kind of like Priest can't remove it with Dragonfire. The fact that sometimes it screws over mages who are going for lethal against you. The fact that a 3/6 on 4 is just really, really good stats and a really, really good pull out of the Guardian are all things that just Swarm might be the better card, but Monk is the better card for this style of deck.
Yeah.
Right. I'm guessing you still take like Gastropod because it's a 2.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. I listed like a certain number of 2s. I listed the 2s that I would take. It's like a Gastropod. I take Forger because at least as a 2/2 it kind of does something. I take Plated Beetle because it activates so many things in Druid. Like it activates Spellstones, it activates the Ironwood Golem, it activates Mark of Charge or anything like that, and it's just like it's so useful there. And like I take Amani Berserker just because it sometimes makes people play stupid.
It does. That is very true. Yeah, it's also quite good. Like in the KNC meta, like there's quite a few like 2/2s, and there's also some like 1/2s, right? In which the Amani is quite good against. So I can definitely see that. That would definitely be interesting. I'm gonna give it a read, and I'm gonna like definitely try it out. Once the meta returns.
So I think this is like the big point here. Besides learning the specific style, and once the KNC meta fully returns, this is a good way to play Druid. like, think about the difference in approach that Tarot does from what we usually do. Because you guys, if you listen to Lightforge, you probably hear us talk all the time about what we do, and we're pretty consistent in what we do, which is we don't take synergy picks unless we have to. Like, if the deck is going in a synergy way, we'll go there, but the synergy picks have to drag us there. We will not go out and do these synergy picks, and we have them rated like a Grizzle Guardian 115. Like, we recognize it's a good card from what it's drawing, but it's certainly not like the linchpin of a deck that's going to get you 9.3, like 9 point whatever wins on average, right? Like, that's not how we view the card. But Tier's Tarot, and he's drafting in a very synergy heavy way, and it's not like an obvious synergy to him. It's not like, oh, I'm doing beasts. It's like I'm actually restructuring my entire deck from the curve onwards. And in the KNC meta, knowing what we know about the KNC meta, which is that 2-drops were not terribly important, and we knew that before even going into the KNC meta. And then you have this card that could be very powerful in the right deck to just really lean heavily in that direction. It works. And so when you're dealing with synergy picks, and like I think Tara brought this up too, it's like, oh, if I get 2 cards that doesn't quite work, then it doesn't work, right? So you really have to kind of commit to this thing. And if you commit to this thing, you look at what you're missing. And what you're missing are things like, if you get offered 1 Druid, you're probably not going to get offered 2 Druid at the Swarms. You don't take that. You take another card that's around the 100. So you drop, like, let's say 50 points on average in there. You gain back the 50 points with all of your synergies. And you can, because Grizzle Guardian is not a 115 if you have primarily 4-drops. It becomes way higher. So you have to make that kind of balance when you're drafting. And it's really like, if you're going for the synergy, and especially if we're talking synergy picks, like the way Blizzard tried to do it, like if it happens early on in your draft, even if you're drafting, like you're thinking, oh, I'm not necessarily doing Tarot's draft, well, but this is pick 3 and I have a Grizzle Guardian, and my next pick was like, I don't know, maybe like, I'm trying to think of a 2-drop that would suck. I'm looking at Druid Scare, Bylefin Tidehunter, right? Maybe don't take the Bylefin Tidehunter and instead take a less good card, like maybe like an Ogre Magi or something that would fit. You would normally not take an Ogre Magi over a Bylefin Tidehunter, but now you can lean into this synergy a bit more. It's a successful synergy, and you also know that it doesn't quite work as well as it could have in a deck-winning linchpin way if you have too many cards. Not even too many, just like, a decent number of cards that are off of this, right? To not screw your deck over. Like, think of it almost like a mini version of, like, Kazakis, right? If you picked a Kazakis, it's not that you can't pick doubles, but if you have, like, 3 duplicates, the Kazakis is a pretty crappy card now. Right? Yeah. So this isn't as swingy, but it's the same idea, where if you pick a Kazakis, you don't want to pick duplicates unless you absolutely have to. If you pick the Grizzle Guardian, you have a chance to make a really good deck going that way. Don't screw it up for yourself by like blindly following the tier list.
Yeah, and just to add on to this, one of the key things is that you kind of have to know when your deck is not going to be a Grizzled Guardian deck. So it's one of those things where, like, sometimes I'll pick Grizzled Guardian real high, and then sometimes I'll realize, okay, I'm about 10 picks in, I haven't really gotten these cards, I've gotten a bunch of 2s, and okay, I'm just going to cut my losses, I'm not going to bother going for this style, and then you have to adjust.
Yes.
And then another thing...
And before, I'll go on after this, but I want to interject right now and say call to arms, listeners. Because this happens in the Twitch chat all the time, where it's pick 25, we have like 2 2-drops and like 1 1-drop, and Call of Arms comes up with like some not spectacular cards, and chat's like, call to arms. I'm like, no, that's like the worst card. I will take like really crappy cards over this at this point.
It's just because it's the most busted card in Constructed. It's like so busted.
Okay. Anyway, go on with your next point.
All right. And the other point I was going to make is that, like, I draft around Grizzled Guardian, and I think it's a good card, but I don't think, like, even with the synergies, it's not like a great or OP card for a couple of reasons. Number one, you're still only putting a Sen'jin on the board for 8 mana. Like, if your opponent has like any sort of silence, or if you're a priest and they have Shadow Madness, or if they're a priest and they have Mind Control, or if they're a priest and they have like a pint-sized potion plus anything else, then you can easily get screwed over by playing this card. So like that's number one. Number two, like you kind of need to be enough ahead when you play this card that you can get the extra value out of this card. Like, so you have to actually recognize the board state, and you have to recognize, okay, in this board state, it's probably better just to like throw all my cards out on the board and then throw the Guardian out next turn, or it's better to throw a big minion on the board rather than the Guardian. So, like, as I said, like I draft around it and I want to get this card, but I recognize that there are times when it's not a great card, or it's not the card that it's the right card to play.
Yeah, this is something in which I've experienced quite a lot. Even when I draft Grizzle Guardian, there's always a fear out there because you're committing a lot into it. It's an 8 mana card, and it doesn't have that much attack, right? And especially during the priest matchups, I'm just like, I don't know if I can afford to play this. Because it just doesn't represent that much attack on the board. So it gives the priest a chance to just put something out there, and then they have initiative on the next turn to buff it or whatever, or they just do their pre-shenanigans and like Shadow Madness it, right? If I don't have a great read on them, or they just like purely silence it, and I'm like, well, that kind of sucks as well. And I think that might just come from my inexperience playing with Grizzle Guardian, and I'll have to just get used to it as well. But for me, I always just feel uncomfortable spending 8 mana to initially just get Ascension Shield Master, right? And then my opponent can like screw up my plans, in my mind, in multiple ways.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's about it for me, because right now it is. By the way, I live in Taiwan, so I kind of had to like take a nap like earlier for this, but it's like 8:45 a.m.
Do you
right
have to go
now,
to work
and I
now?
have to. I don't go to work until the afternoon.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I want to get some sleep in before work.
Yes.
Excellent. You know what, Tarrot? This is good. You go infinite in the arena, but not infinite on the podcast, which is the way it should be. Okay.
Close.
Yeah. So no, thank you for coming out. Before you leave, is there anything else that you want to pitch? If people wanted to sort of find more about the philosophy or the word of tarot, like where can they find you?
All right. I don't stream, partially because I know I couldn't stream. So as I said, I'm a pleb mod in Shady's channel, unless people buy me subs, which I'm thankful for. But I'm pretty much always on the Arena HS sub forums. So if you see me there, that's fine. Or if you see me playing on NA, feel free to add me. I've had like I think a dozen people add me on NA because they know who I am from all the stats posts.
Nice.
And Tarot is spelled Tarrot. I say that because I know everyone will think it's Taro, who are just listening to the podcast and not watching this on YouTube.
Yeah, when I was like a 16-year-old edgelord, I thought, hey, wait a minute, I'm going to add an extra R to Tarot, and this is going to be such a cool name.
I mean...
And then it's stuck for like 20 years.
How do you think ADWCTA came to be? I think I was like a 12-year-old edgelord, and now I don't even tell people what that means.
I wasn't an edgelord, as you can see from Merps. There's nothing edgy about Merps. It is what it is, you know? Yeah, Tarot, thank you so much for coming out. Advocate, like, did you still have anything you want to say?
No, I just wanted to thank Tarot for staying up so late or waking up so early to be with us and do this live, and also all the work he does in the Arena community. I know we've been like looking to bring him on before this, and it never quite like came together with the schedule. So I'm really glad we got this to work. But Tarot's been very vocal in the Arena community for like almost a full year, and like very much a part of the Arena community for all the years before that as well. And we definitely appreciate everything he does for both the Arena community and, whenever our tier list comes out, all the comments that come. If you just go on Reddit and read like the like back and forth between me and Tarot, like actually like very publicly on on Reddit whenever a tier list change comes out, I think it's pretty illuminating if you care about how the tier list is being set up, and also like how certain things are like there's disagreements, or there's things in which we figure out a better way to do things because there's a series of patterns of things that Tarot's pointing out, and it's all very helpful. So I hope you guys listening to this podcast learn some things about I don't know, overall micro adjusts or Blizzard communications or wild, standard, and definitely Druid and KNC when it comes back. So once again, thank you so much, Tarrot, for everything you've done, and I hope you continue to do.
Yeah, feel free to have me on later on if like you want to talk about like I think the leak is Cenarian Circle. Like
Yeah.
somebody said that there's a Cenarian Circle website registered to Blizzard. But yeah, feel free to have me on, and I can debate you guys about which cards I think are going to be good or bad from that.
I'm sure. I'm sure you will have many opinions on that. Anyways, thanks for coming on, man. Adricta, take us home.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching or listening, and until next week, this is Adwicta.
This is Merps. Good luck for the rest of Wild Arena.
And we are out.
Yep. Stop. Remember to save project as this is a